I wanted to talk today about the actual brain structure and science of why brain retraining and limbic system healing works. I think there's kind of this mystery that we try to keep in the brain retraining community for some reason, and it's not like some big secret. It's very specific brain science as to why limbic system work and brain retraining work are able to help heal a lot of chronic health symptoms. So, when we have chronic illness and our symptoms seem like they just keep going on, or they can come and go, we look at brain retraining because of neuroplasticity and the principles of neuroplasticity and the ability for our limbic system to shift from fight or flight, rest and digest, social engagement theory. All of this science gives us a toolkit really to work on the really complex world of chronic health issues. So, we want to look a little bit at this concept of hypervigilance. And when you're sick for a long time or in pain for a long time, the role of hypervigilance in perpetuating a sympathetic nervous system or flight or fight nervous system dominance, which then keeps us stuck in chronic health issue state. So, at the heart of our limbic system, deep within our temporal lobe, we have the amygdala and the hippocampus. And these are like the sentinels of the threat response. And together they form this emotional core of our brain and they shape our responses to the world around us. The amygdala, sometimes we hear it referred to as the brain's alarm system, and it plays a really pivotal role in detecting threats. When it perceives danger, it triggers our fight or flight response. It releases stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, which in acute situations is life-saving. But in the context of chronic illness, this overactive amygdala and this feeling that everything is a threat, when we get caught up in a fear mentality, when we get caught up in these super restrictive diets where we think that every food is a trigger, every environment is a trigger, the more we go down the rabbit hole of being afraid of everything, our amygdala gets basically locked into fight or flight. And this leads to not only a perpetual state of alertness and hypervigilance, but also a perpetual state of living with a whole bunch of adrenaline and cortisol built up in our systems, which is not good for our overall health. We also have the hippocampus, which is nearby, and it acts as the brain's memory center. And it plays a really vital role in encoding and storing information, which includes our emotional response to our past experiences. So when we have chronic health issues or chronic pain, the hippocampus can become compromised because it's having this really prolonged exposure of stress hormones, and it's storing a disproportionate amount of negative, scary memories rather than remembering or holding on to positive memories. And this actually can impair memory formation, it can impair cognitive function, and it messes with our ability to distinguish between genuine threats and harmless stimuli. So imagine that your amygdala is a sentinel standing guard and it's ready to sound the alarm at the slightest, stimuli. So in the context of our chronic illness community, the heightened sense of alertness, like hypervigilance is what we would call it, is particularly dangerous. It's like a perpetual threat. The alarm system has gone off for so long, we don't even hear the alarm anymore. If you have ever had one of those alarms that like beeps constantly because maybe the battery needs changed or something, and then over time you don't even hear it anymore, and someone comes over and they're like, don't you hear that beeping? Like, that's what happens when you're in stress for so long perpetually, or you're in pain for so long perpetually. It's like your limbic system is fried and you don't even notice it, or you can't differentiate anymore between what's real and what's not really a threat. So hypervigilance perpetuates that dominant sympathetic nervous system activation, meaning when we're hypervigilant, we keep ourselves locked into that fight or flight nervous system activation. So when this system remains active for long periods, it cascades into a bunch of actual physiological changes. Our heart rate increases long term, our blood pressure goes up, we have digestive issues because in fight or flight mode, all of our energy and blood flow is directed away from our digestive system into our muscles that we would need to literally fight or flight. So chronic muscle tension, sleep issues, insomnia, weakened immune system. And over time, all of these stress responses build up, and they either lead to the development of or the exacerbation of pre-existing health issues and pain issues. So this is where brain retraining comes in. And this is where I think there's a lot of confusion. with neuroplasticity and why we try to get the word out there on brain retraining is so many people hear the concept of brain retraining and they're like, oh, great. Another person's telling me that all my symptoms are in my head, and people get angry and they get reactive, and rightfully so. A lot of doctors gaslight people with mystery symptoms, right? It took me over 20 years to get properly diagnosed with Lyme. It took my daughter many years to get diagnosed correctly with Lyme and PANS, people dealing with POTS and hypermobility and MCAS. All of these mystery symptoms or chronic pain, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, long haul symptoms. Doctors make you think it's in your head. This is psychosomatic. And that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is it's real. The stimuli are real. The physiological changes are real. But being caught in that state for so long, not getting validation, not getting treatment over years and years and years, even if the initial acute factors that caused the symptoms have gone away, your brain has become stuck and your nervous system has become stuck in a maladaptive state. So neuroplasticity is our brain's amazing ability to rewire itself and create new pathways and shut down old pathways. So we want to focus on calming an overactive amygdala and nervous system and rewiring the way our brain views stimuli and views chronic health issues and views pain, because if we can change the way we think about it, that then changes the way that we have our emotions come out. It changes the way that we act day to day, and it can actually change our symptoms. So if you think about just opposite action, right? So if we know that the adrenaline and cortisol and chronic stress response of being locked into sympathetic nervous system is what kind of perpetuates chronic pain and chronic illness, we know that we can also put ourselves into parasympathetic through activities like positive self-talk, brain retraining kind of activities, yoga, deep breathing, time in nature, so many different things, right? We can go on for hours about what puts us into parasympathetic or rest and digest mode. We can also talk about Polyvagal Theory, which is a whole new continuum of the nervous system. It doesn't just view it as binary, fight or flight, rest or digest. It views being socially engaged with others and feeling safe as a really healthy place to be. And so then we are restoring our equilibrium. And if we can get ourselves into that state, it does the opposite. We are no longer pumping out adrenaline and cortisol. We are actually making healthy physiological changes, which then in turn changes a lot of the cascade of symptoms we might have been feeling for years. So there's several steps and key components to brain retraining across the board. Whether you're doing free videos on YouTube, if you're signing up for someone's paid course or coaching programs, the first step is something about mindfulness and awareness, right? We're recognizing the triggers that activate the amygdala's threat response. That's our first step. The heightened self-awareness allows us to consciously intervene in that cycle of hypervigilance. So we just want to start noticing, like, what are our triggers? What has kept us locked into the state for so long? Then we move more into the self-talk, the affirmations, telling our brain, we're going to stop this thought. We are going to move on to a new system here, and I am healing, right? Positive affirmations that reprogram our negative thought loops and our negative beliefs that have taken a foothold over time. This is going to soothe our amygdala and encourage a sense of safety. It does go deeper than this. This part, I think, sounds kind of like, oh, great, positive self-talk. But really, if we get into a habit of also researching, it's evidence-based positive self-talk. It's, my amygdala getting stuck in this hypervigilant state is setting off a cascade of stress hormones. I don't have to get caught up in this anymore. I'm choosing something different. I'm choosing to practice my deep breathing in nature today, and I am going to feel better because of it. We're using evidence-based language to help us heal. It's not just, I'm fine, everything's good. I think that's another place brain retraining gets a bad reputation. The next is breath work and mindfulness and meditation. So even something as simple as like a Bioh Hack is, we know that if you exhale longer than you inhale, you are shifting to parasympathetic state. Because when we're taking those short, shallow breaths, or we're inhaling longer than our exhale, we're hyperventilating. Instantly, we're in sympathetic fight or flight. If we can do a nice controlled counted breath, if we're doing any sort of mindful breathing, we are signaling to our nervous system that we're safe, and we go into parasympathetic state. We activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and that promotes relaxation and calm, strengthens our immune response, strengthens our ability to be resilient and cope with stressors. We're then going to move on to gradual exposure. So, part of any brain retraining program, we get to the point where we are kind of living and hanging out more at baseline in a parasympathetic state so that we can control exposure and experiment to perceived triggers in a safe, supportive environment. And we desensitize our amygdala's response. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going out and jumping right into like, oh, these foods caused a huge reaction, I should be fine now, and not getting any sort of slow controlled exposure. But what this might look like is if you're reacting really strongly to the heat as a trigger, instead of feeling like I can just never be in heat again, I can't do anything with hot weather, I can't be hot, I always have to be in a cool environment. Once we get control of the amygdala and the nervous system response, we are going to be safe to experiment even with running our hands under warm water, maybe taking a warm shower on a bench with support there, walking outside for a little bit, sitting outside, seeing where our triggers really are. And once our nervous system is in a better state consistently, we are going to be surprised that we can handle triggers that before we had gotten so afraid of them that they had created a negative experience in our head, and they were literally causing a stress response just by the thought of them. So as we control our thoughts and our fears, we can differentiate between what are real triggers that might still exist versus what are triggers that have become ingrained in our head out of fear. An other element of this might be our nutrition and lifestyle, consulting with functional doctors, because along the lines, I think most of us have probably with chronic illness resorted to crazy restrictive diets or crazy restrictive lifestyle changes. And our goal here is, we might still have certain things we need to follow as far as diet or lifestyle, but we want to be as open and well balanced as we can. We don't want to feel like we have to be super restrictive about everything. We want to live a life that feels easy and safe. And the safer we feel, the less we feel like we have to control every detail to be safe. And this also goes into community support. So if we have a supportive community, if we have friends or a therapist or a coach or a group of people that are able to help us reach these goals and to support us and not scare us, this makes invaluable difference for us. So a lot of times this looks like leaving the illness-focused groups, even if they feel like a support for you, because they're perpetuating the cycle of fear. This might look like setting boundaries with friends or family that kind of have their own narrative that you're sick or that you're not going to change, and either setting a boundary that they have to start talking to you differently because you're talking to yourself differently, or maybe it's just connecting with some new people that are going to reinforce the narrative that you're working on as well. So healing this illness, or any pain or anything like this, it's redefining how we view ourselves. And we're thanking our limbic system for protecting us, but we're letting it know that we're okay. Like we're going to work on a new way of living that doesn't have to always be on high alert anymore. And so we're going to focus on self-discovery, resilience, hope. And if we can understand that dance between our amygdala and our hippocampus and hypervigilance, we can take these steps to start hanging out and living in a calmer limbic system, rewire these maladaptive neural pathways, and facilitate healing. So our brain, the core of neuroplasticity is that our brain is a dynamic, adaptable organ, and we are capable of profound transformation. So if you're patient and you're pushing through and you have the right tools, you can 100% have a healthier, more full life. So I hope this helps you guys today. I hope that these videos are helpful, and thank you guys for always hanging in there with me. And I wish you nothing but the best and a day full of healing and love.